Since 2003, this is the Sports Source, East Tennessee's #1 sports talk show.
Presented by Pipe Wrench, and by Junk Be Gone, and by the Garza Law Firm.
With your host, John Pennington. The Sports Source starts now.
Good Sunday morning. Welcome into the Junk Be Gone studios in today's episode of the Sports Source. We're happy to have you with us. We got plenty to cover today. We've got the Vegas folks are putting out their lines for the year. So over-unders are out there from about 3 different sources. We'll show you those. How does Tennessee stack up versus SEC teams? Then you take those wins and losses, those projected wins. Let's put those together with the SEC schedules and see who's got the toughest schedule in the league, who's got the easiest schedule in the league. Might surprise some people. We'll also talk about whether Florida is still a top program in the SEC. Yes, Tennessee still has their issues with them, but have they now become what Tennessee was for that decade after Fulmer, where it just kind of fell off the cliff? I mean, we'll talk about Florida's program. Also, of all the programs in the country still playing baseball and softball, is Tennessee the best positioned to win a twofer, a double national championship? Much to cover today. Let's get into it. First segment of our show brought to you by our friends at the Garza Law Firm. So many of the clients on this show who bring you this show every week are based right here in our area, and that sense of community is important both for this show and also just for across your daily lives. You want companies that are giving back to the community, chipping in, helping others. Boy, that is the Garza Law Firm, I tell you. Marcos Garza is an East Tennessee native, and he and his team are the best attorneys you will find anywhere across all of East Tennessee. Start with them if you need an attorney. If you need somebody to help you with a problem you found yourself in, it's a great place to start. The Garza Law Firm. Find out more at garzalaw.com. All right, let's welcome in the first group of panelists. We still have one more waiting in the wings. Jimmy Hyten's right here, Josh Ward, Will West, Ryan Callahan. The little graphics underneath these guys when they talk will tell you exactly who they are and where they work. Sometimes I'll throw that out if we got time to kill. We're too jam-packed today. I don't care where you work. They can read it. Here's the deal. We had it's all about national views on Tennessee today is kind of the look. Jesse Simonton of On3, in case you don't know, On3 is the new Rivals 24/7. Jesse Simonton was on our show many years ago. He writes for On3 now, and he did a couple of rankings this week where he looked at the top 10 offensive lines in the country, top 10 defensive lines in the country. Tennessee was on both lists. I was surprised about the offensive line list. Let's start with defensive line. You've had people talking about Tennessee's defensive line being the best in the country. I think you had a coach that threw that out there, and I think he quickly tried to put that toothpaste back in the tube. I think he just slipped in saying it. But Ohio State #1, Michigan #2. You see the light orange there, the peach color, that's SEC teams. So you got Georgia, you got Ole Miss, and then you got Tennessee at #9. So very quickly, 9th best defensive line in the country. Whoever wants it, you agree with that? Is it too high, too low? Should it be higher than that? They're the best defensive line in the SEC?
I think that's low. Honestly, I think that's low. I think Tennessee's defensive line's better than that. I think especially when you consider the depth that they have at defensive line. Also, some of the defensive, like Ole Miss's defensive line, I don't believe in a whole lot. I mean, you couldn't stop anyone last year. Yeah. So some of the teams that are ahead of them, I think Tennessee has a better defensive line than they do. So I would probably put Tennessee in the top 5 or 6 right now.
Ole Miss got help from the transfer portal. Don't forget Walter Nolan.
The portal king.
Yeah, so I think that's about right. I mean, I think Tennessee, the talk of them having the best defensive line in the country, that seems a bit much to me. But they have a lot of depth, as Will said. So I think that's the big thing. Aside from James Pierce, does anyone in that group stand out? I think that's the key. Those other teams have some stars, I think, a lot of them. So, Tennessee, not a whole lot besides James Pierce in terms of star power, but they do have a lot of good players. So I think top 10's about right. And I don't know, 7, 8, you can quibble with those, but not in the range where I'd put them.
Yeah, I can't tell you what Oregon's defensive line looks like. But you said a couple weeks ago on our show, I forgot what my question was. I do that.
Overrated and underrated position.
Yeah, and you had them as possibly overrated for those very same reasons.
Yeah.
They got one good star, a lot of good players, but is it really the #1 unit in the country that people are talking about? Yeah. All right, so we got one they're underrated, one that's about right. Josh, Jimmy, what do you think?
I would say about right. I would move Tennessee up before I'd move them down in that spot because Pierce is the one star in that group. He's a pretty talented star that we're going to get to. And a year ago, we didn't know Pierce was going to do what he ended up doing. out of all these guys that we're talking about on Tennessee's defensive line, somebody else could jump and have a big season, just like could happen with any other team. But the depth, the seniority as well. They have a lot of old guys on the defensive line from a college standpoint, Jimmy. I think that makes them pretty strong. But I'd say about right, third in the SEC, ninth overall.
I'd go a little higher, and in part because of what you said. The star power is with Pierce. But I think Amari Thomas is really good. Norman Lott's really good. Josephs, I think, has a chance to take a step. But it's the depth. I don't know, and I'll admit, I don't know the depth at Oregon and some of these other programs, but I can't imagine many teams in the country having better quality depth, not just depth.
Veteran
quality.
depth, yeah.
Yes.
Proven.
So given that, I would put them a little higher. I'd probably have them in around 5 or 6 like Will.
Okay, well, let's go to the list that sort of surprised me. I did not expect to see Tennessee listed on the top 10 offensive lines. And there you go. Now you see, look at the SEC teams in that. LSU, Texas, Georgia, Alabama. Then you got Oklahoma State, Oregon. You got Missouri's offensive line, Miami. Then Tennessee and Ole Miss. But Tennessee, 9th best offensive line, 9th best defensive line. Now, Simon did right. Part of this is the system, which, Jimmy, you've bashed on for a couple of years now, that the system helps that run game a little bit. Still, though, 9th? That seems high to me. I wouldn't do that.
Well, to be honest with you, I'd have them closer to 9th in the SEC than in the country.
Woof. Yeah.
Where's the depth on? And I'll brag about the defensive line depth. Where's the depth on the offensive line? What if Cooper Mays gets hurt? Who's the backup center? You're still trying to identify one of your guard spots. I do think they have several quality players on the offensive line, but not enough depth, and you're going to have some injuries up front. I would not put them in the top 10. I wouldn't put them even close to the top 10.
My only question would be which teams in this day and age have depth at offensive line, because and I'm not trying to argue with you, that's a legitimate question. You look at a team like LSU that had a 5-star sitting there who's now at Tennessee. How many great backups are still sitting at, you had guys at Alabama that sat there because, well, Nick Saban's going to get me in the pros. Are they still going to sit there with Kalen DeBoer in the years going ahead? So I think your point's good. I don't see them being in the top 10, and I do question their depth, but I also have to ask, what's the depth like everywhere else for offensive line when that's so valuable in the portal?
Yeah, that's true. One other quick point. Tennessee led the SEC in rushing yards.
Yeah.
And I think people don't even look at the offensive line. Oh, they led the league in rushing. Must have a really good offensive line.
Very good point.
Look, I think that's about right when everyone's healthy. Because part of when you're doing a list is you're presuming health, right? At that point, when you look at the players, I love what Tennessee has on the interior portion of the offensive line. There's a lot of games missed between their center and their right guard last year. I don't think they have a tackle that can play at this level yet since Darnell Wright's left. I think what we saw last year for the 2 tackles they have, they just weren't good enough. Now, the pace and the tempo of the offense means they probably don't have to do as much as some other tackles. But we bring in a guy from LSU that was going to start there. Let's see him be good first before we start presuming that he's going to be great, I think.
I think the ranking's a little too high, but I understand the reasoning, I guess, because you look at the right side of that line, Cooper Mays, Javonte Spraggins, John Campbell, a lot of starts with those 3 guys. And then on the other side, you've got a former 5-star at left tackle. You don't know what you have at left guard. That's obviously the big position we're not sure about. This group has a lot of uncertainty there, too. So with one starting spot being shaky and one being a first-time starter, hard for me to put them in the top 10. But to your point, John, how many teams out there were dying for offensive line help in the portal? It's a position where no one feels good about what they have, and I think that's part of that ranking.
You would know better than I, but quarterbacks get paid X. I would think tackles maybe number 2 or number 3.
Good tackles are up there.
They're way up there. So, Josh, your thoughts on the offensive line and being ranked in the top 10 in the country?
Yeah, depth is a big reason we would either hold steady or move the defensive line up. Well, then depth would be a reason I'd probably move the offensive line down. And I know that's for different reasons. You rotate on the defensive line. You hope to avoid injury on the offensive line, but you also probably have to expect injury at some point on the offensive line. So I'm not totally surprised, though, because I looked at the teams that were outside. I didn't see one traditional Big Ten school. Oregon's the only one that's there, and we usually think offensive line Big Ten.
Michigan, Ohio State.
Wisconsin had a bunch of transfers out. Michigan's having to replace some guys. So I think Tennessee benefited from other schools' issues. That goes back to the point of how many schools do have legitimate depth, and that might be why Tennessee gets a boost. They at least have backups that are seniors like Dane Davis and Jackson Lampley, unproven as starters, but 5th, 6th-year guys compared to what other schools are trying to do too.
All right, I want to move on. There was one other list from On3. We don't have a graphic for you. I can just tell you. A few weeks ago, it's funny when you say something, the responses you get, but I said a couple of weeks ago, James Pierce, number 1 draft pick overall. I think that's going to be a quarterback. Is he top 5 capable? I guess he looks like a speed rusher to me. I need to see more. Maybe that's just me. But the response was, oh, yeah, trying to make sure he doesn't get drafted. I'm like, well, if that's the case, it sure didn't work with Joe Milton going to my Patriots. But the Pierce thing, I'm already on record as, it seems a little high to me. Well, Nick Schultz of On3 put out a list of the top 100 players in college football. Yes, the number one college football player, offense, defense, across America, senior, junior, doesn't matter. Number one player in the country is James Pierce, as I break my finger. I mean, if the way it's going this offseason, by August they're just going to hand him the Heisman Trophy. I mean, I'm stunned that his name just keeps going up there. But okay, you guys tell me, number one player on the planet. James Pierce.
I get it, right? Because I think he has a combination of explosiveness and bend that you don't normally see, but he's got to gain 10 or 12 pounds to really be a top 5 pick in the pros, I think, from where he is right now. I think Quinshon Judkins is the best player in college football. But if you get on the rest of that list, we lost a lot of star power in college football last year, and there aren't that many returning stars.
You can put him in the mix.
With his production. So if you look at it and you say Judkins underperformed last year, Carson Beck was really, really good, but I don't know who else I would put there. So especially when you look at the pass rush win rate that he had.
Number one player in college football?
I'm not going there. I mean, he has that kind of talent. I understand the ranking
could
reasoning.
Be at the end
so
of the year,
maybe, could be. I think this, like Will said, this is a reflection of the fact that there are no known stars in college football that you trust enough to put up. Quinn Ewers and guys like that, you're not putting them at number one right now. So I think it's more a reflection of that, not so much that he's that good.
I think it's a reflection of what we do in this business. And that is, we look at other lists to influence our list. Because Nick Schultz, no offense, you haven't watched every college football player in the country. So you're looking at the fact, the more people say this guy's incredible, the more people are going to say this guy's incredible. How do you know? Well, he's on every list, so I have to put him on my list. I think he's good, but number one in the country, Jimmy.
John, I have seen every college player.
There you go. And he is
not in the top. No, he's not number one. No, I think he made one play last year that's elevated his stock tremendously. The interception return against Iowa, and people look at that and say, "Look at that versatility." And that was a great play on his part. I give him that. But he also has to be consistent in that regard. He has to be a good run stopper. Yeah. I think he's a terrific pass rusher. I think he had 10 sacks last year, which was either close to being first in the SEC or tied for first, whatever. I don't think he's as good as Myles Garrett. That would be a guy I would compare to who was a number one pick in the draft. So I think Pierce is a top 10 guy. I don't see him as number one.
Josh.
Yeah, I would just reiterate multiple points. I think that James Pierce benefits from the mock drafts that have him as the number one player in next year's draft, so that kind of goes into your mind. And then there's no obvious quarterback. Yeah. If you have a Heisman Trophy winner coming back like a year ago, well, then you put that guy right there at number one. There's no obvious quarterback. Carson Beck would feel like a reach. Number two is Luther Burden at Missouri. Right. That's arguable. Will Campbell, I think, is in the top 5 offensive tackle at LSU.
The top 5 are all from the SEC.
Yeah, and maybe Will Campbell is the best. That would feel like a reach. So I think it's a reach anywhere. Pierce is so athletically gifted. Yeah. The plays in the bowl game, draft stock, makes sense for why he's the choice out of all the other players considered.
He's going to have some serious expectations to live up to this fall. So that's why I'm tempering mine a little bit, because I'm Mr. Fair. Always have been. All right, when we come back, are college football fans ready for a revolution? Because that's what you're getting this year. I don't know if you've actually made a list. We're going to show you a list of all the changes coming to college football this year. And we're going to discuss, is there any way that this could hurt college football? Come on back. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by A.G. Hines Company. The beauty of going with a local building materials company is that they have what you need right here. They don't have to send off to Oklahoma City to get it. The home office didn't send it to Saskatoon. They are the home office right here, downtown Knoxville, on Hines Street, appropriately enough. That's what happens when you're in business for more than 100 years. They name streets after you. Heck, there were people with saloon doors back when they opened. That's how impressive A.G. Hines Company is. And if you are doing a do-it-yourself project, by all means, be smart. Get down there, check them out before you start your project. Guarantee you, you're going to be happy you did. aghines.com to learn more about one of Knoxville's best companies. All right, college football fans are gearing up for a 2024 season that will literally be like none other. We've never seen anything like this in terms of change all happening at once. And when I say change all at once, take a look at this. You will have no more Pac-12. The Pac-12, Pac-8 as it was in the 70s, Pac-10, no more. So that's gone. Colorado, Arizona, Arizona State, and Utah are all joining a new 16-team Big 12. UCLA, USC, Washington, and Oregon are joining an 18-team Big 10. 18 teams, wow. Texas and Oklahoma are joining a 16-team SEC. Stanford, Cal, and SMU are joining a 17-team ACC. Yes, the Atlantic Coast Conference finally comes to Stanford and Cal. There will be a 12-team playoff. Remember, for, I don't know, my entire life up until about 15 years ago, there was no way you will ever have a playoff. Can't happen, won't happen. Well, you had a 4-team, now it's jumping to 12, and before the 12 launches, they're still talking about a 14. In-helmet communications, that's a first. 2-minute warning now coming, like the pro game. Players now have unlimited transfers, so good luck knowing players. Pay-for-play rules no longer exist, in part thanks to Tennessee and their lawsuit. And you're on the verge right now, so by the time the season gets here, you may have player revenue sharing that's already meted out, that's already figured out, or players as employees. I've never seen anything like it. No one's ever seen anything like it. It's a whole lot to get used to, a whole lot to wrap your head around. When you're watching a game this year and you see Oregon versus Michigan, you're going to say, oh, wow, good intersection. Oh, no, that's a conference game. Jimmy, is there any way all this change at once could hurt how fans view college football? Or are they already just so in it, there's nothing that can happen?
No, I think it could hurt college football. I don't think that you can look at the last 2 years and say, oh, look at the ratings, or look at women's basketball with Caitlin Clark, or look at other things and then make a blanket statement. I think you have to have a bigger sample size of that. I still know people that don't know what conference West Virginia's in. So, and a lot of people are resistant to change. So I think there's the chance of turning some people off about it. I don't even know what conference they're in. I don't know this. I don't know that. Some balk at the fact that players can enter the transfer portal every year and get a better deal from NIL. I think there is great potential to hurt college athletics.
I'm going to throw one other one in here that's going to sound silly, but everybody now has 18 uniforms too. So not only are you flipping on a game and not knowing who these two schools are, once you figure out who these two schools are from their uniforms, you're still going to have to remember, now what conference are they in? That's just another thing to throw out there. Josh, could it hurt college football, this much change at once, or college football fans dyed in the wool?
I think that college football is still going to thrive and build. I wonder about the moving around of networks with the teams. Can you legitimately find them? Do you have access through the different streaming?
And streaming, yeah.
Yeah, so I'm kind of throwing that into the mix.
That could have been on there too, yeah.
Yeah, so all that said, though, I think some of the changes we're seeing to the conferences, people will see, well, okay, what game's on today? Oh, I get Ohio State, Oregon? I'm kind of interested in seeing those two teams play. So the diehards, I think, will still be in. I think we're in the middle of complain about a lot of stuff season, which is just natural in college football. That's actually very traditional. But I think college football is going to thrive and money's going to grow. There will be individual schools that I think are hurt. But college football, I think, will benefit.
For years, the complaints have been, why don't we have mega conferences? Why don't we have a playoff? Why don't we have free transfers? Why don't we have played players? Will, could any of this hurt college football?
No, it's recession-proof. It's completely recession-proof. Now, what we will get is Josh and I in our shows will get 10 text messages a week in the text box that we have complaining about the change, and I'll never watch again, and then everyone's going to watch. So that's what it's going to be. Now, does it hurt the Oregon State, Washington State fan? Yeah, that hurts them. But for the SEC fan, the people in Knoxville, the biggest thing that hurts still, I think, college football is half of the games that every team has are unwatchable right now with cupcake opponents and then dead weight within your own conference. If people are still willing to go through that, yeah, they'll deal with all these other changes. It doesn't change the way they consume football for the most part.
I think it's untouchable in the South. I think it's untouchable in the Midwest. It's very much touchable out west. There is nobody cares in the East anymore. It is a middle of America kind of sport these days. The wings are gone. So I think it can be hurt. I looked this week and I saw last year on television, the top 100 television shows, 95 were NFL games. 95 of the top 100. We down here think, oh, how many were college football? That doesn't compare to pro football.
No.
Pro football is recession-proof.
Yeah.
Although they deserve a kick in the tail, pro football is just bulletproof. College football, I don't know. The number one rated college football game last year was Ohio State, Michigan. It ranked number 58 on that list. So you got 95 NFL games on there. The best college football game was number 58. I do think it's touchable. I do wonder if, I think people will still turn it on. Saturday afternoon, we're going to flip it on. It'll be good for ratings, blah, blah, blah. I don't know if they're going to connect to it. I don't know if the next generation is going to connect to it in the same way that we did growing up, knowing that this is my team, these are my small amount of rivals. I don't know. I think it could be dangerous. But here's the deal. I want to know what you think. So in the next segment, when we come back, we're going to ask a poll question. We're going to let you tell us. And some people are already voting online, and the answer's already interesting to me. We'll see if you change that when you see it. But the question is going to be, is there any way this could impact your interest in college football in a negative way? And when we come back, the over-under lists are out there. Let's take a look at 3 different services, see what they say about Tennessee, see what they say about the other teams in the conference. Is there anybody that's too high, too low? What about the Vols? Let's talk about it next on the Sports Source. Welcome back into the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Parkside Cabin Rentals. If you're looking for a fun new vacation experience, well, you need to rent your crew a private cabin in the beautiful Smoky Mountains this summer. TripAdvisor users have voted Parkside Cabin Rentals another Traveler's Choice Award this year. They do it every year. Find out why. Visit ParksideCabinRentals.com today. Find the right cabin for you and your group and lock that baby in before it's taken up. Parkside Cabin Rentals. The Ogles put so much pride in what they do. And boy, you see it in every cabin you get up there. Parkside Cabin Rentals. All right, want to introduce the last member of our panel here. Vince Ferrara joins us. Vince, thanks for being here.
Appreciate you.
I like the shirt-coat combo. It's
Thank
a good
you.
look. Thanks for being here. Now, the poll question. I want to put this up for you folks at home. There we go. Could mass changes ever make you lose interest in college football? Your options are, if I could read them, they've already got me. There's nothing, basically, they've already got me. There's nothing that could hurt that. If it becomes semi-pro, that might cause me to lose interest. Mega conferences could cause me to lose interest. And then the last option, which surprises me, those who've been online and voted, already getting there, already starting to lose interest. We'll see if that stands. What you got to do is take your phone, get that QR code. That'll take you right to our website, or you can just go to our website, sportsource.tv, look for the polls button, click that, and tell us how you feel, and you can watch the little lines move. But tell us how you think. Could it impact you as a Tennessee or SEC sports fan? Or are you like, nah, I'm in, no matter what? All right, let's take a look with Ryan and Vince here at the SEC over-unders that I just mentioned as we went to break. All right, what you got? Up at the top, and this is for the Action Network, the Circa Sportsbook, and FanDuel. Action Network and FanDuel are pretty much the same. Circa's a little off. They do some without the half, so they'll risk the push. But you got Georgia and Texas at 10.5. ahead of everybody else. Then you got Alabama and Ole Miss at 9.5 across the board. That's their over/under win total. Then you've got LSU, Missouri, and Tennessee, 9.5, 9, 9.5. So let's just look at that top half there, guys. Vince, your thoughts on the over/under win totals there? Is Tennessee about right? 9.5, 9, 9.5.
I do think Tennessee is right. I think it's in that range. I obviously, the offense is still going to be very good, defensive line. So you have a nice base there. I don't think the schedule is overwhelming. So I think it's in the right range. Georgia is one that I'd probably still go the over. I mean, until they show me, like LSU went through a couple of years ago, that class after class of all of these players going to the NFL is holding them back and bringing them back to the pack a little bit. I'm just going to kind of, like we did for Alabama, a lot of times just default to them because of the stockpile talent. So I think it was pretty accurate on those two.
I would have Georgia just a tick ahead of Texas.
Yeah.
There's some unknown about Texas coming in, I mean, just in my view. So we'll see about that one. But I would have Georgia, then Texas. I don't know that I'd have Ole Miss equal with Alabama.
Yeah, the odds I'm sure might favor the under on some of those. Texas is one. I agree. I don't know that I'd knock them down to 9.5, but I'd say maybe 10. You know, somewhere around there. I just
risk the push.
Yeah, Georgia's a little ahead of them in my mind. I think the others are about right. I think what that shows you, a lot of 9.5, right? A lot of no one really knows what to think of that second tier in the SEC, Alabama included. But Tennessee, Missouri's got an easy schedule. That's one of the reasons you see that. But Tennessee, I think they're they're in the right range. I think 9 is probably the most accurate number. The problem is everywhere that has them as 9.5, the odds favor the under. Everyone that has them at 8.5 is what it started one place.
Yes.
The odds favored the over. So
And
everyone sees them as a 9-win team, basically.
Yeah, see, to me, it's jumped a little too high.
Yeah.
I think it should have stayed about 8.5. I think their outlook this year for me is 8 or 9 wins, not 9 or 10 wins. I could see the 9. I would probably go over on the 8.5 and under on the 9.5. I would put them down there with Texas A&M. I go back to new quarterback. We'll see how that all breaks in. But 8.5 seems more correct to me. You were going to say?
I was going to say, the only other team that I think might be a touch high, LSU. I don't know if they're quite at the 9.5 range. I would probably have them 9, 8.5. I think someone's going to fall a little bit in this new SEC. I just don't know who it's going to be. I just think LSU without Jaden Daniels, that's a different team. We don't know exactly how good they're going to be.
Let's go back to the graphic if we could. Let's look at the teams over there on the right side, the losers of the league, if you will. Auburn 7.5, Oklahoma 7.5. 7.5 is the over-under, and this is a team that's consistently ranked in the top 10 in all the preseason polls. Kentucky at 6.5, and then you got the under 500 crew: South Carolina, Arkansas, Florida, Mississippi State, Vandy. Anybody there that should be higher?
Higher? Probably not.
Vince, you bumping anybody?
Yeah, I mean, I don't know that Florida is a 4 or 5 win team. The schedule is what gets them there. Mississippi State is intriguing. New coach. What do they look like? Kentucky is one. I saw a list of the top 100 players in college football, and Kentucky actually had 3 players on that list. Tennessee had 1. And
I should have said that when the first segment. I should have said he was the only Vol on the list.
Oklahoma had 0. So I wonder about them also. And they're, whether it's Texas or Oklahoma, one of the two or both, there's going to be an adjustment to the SEC grind week after week. So I wonder about their number 2. But above that number, I don't know if I saw anyone really that jumps out.
Okay, that's too low.
I saw a couple that struck me as too high, if you want to go that route. Yeah. Texas A&M, we didn't get to them in the first segment.
You dropped them?
I would drop them. 8.5 seems a little high to me with a new coach, a lot of unknowns there. They could be good, but 8 wins seems about right for maybe thinking that's a realistic number for them. And I also, on the low side, Florida. I can make an argument for them to be 3.5, honestly. Their schedule is so tough.
They'd go lower.
I don't know what, 4 as an over-under probably sounds about right to me, but I just don't know if they can get to 5 with that schedule.
That's an interesting point you make about Florida. As a matter of fact, when we come back, last week I talked about Tennessee needs to schedule better in non-conference. I do it once a year. It's like the Swallows coming back to Capistrano. I go back to non-conference scheduling. And is it the Swallows? I don't know. At any rate, something goes back to Capistrano every year, some bird. I go back to scheduling. I mentioned it last week, and I got people who responded by saying, Tennessee's schedule in the SEC is too tough. You can't play teams like that. And they were worried about Florida. Florida? Should people be worried about Florida? Come on back. We'll discuss if Florida is still a top SEC program. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Southeast Termite and Pest Control. The weather is going to go from warm to hot and humid very soon. And that means mosquitoes will be around very soon to annoy you, bite you, and try to give you some awful disease. So what do? Kill them. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, they know how. Call them and ask them about their new mosquito treatment. Safer for all the other critters in your yard, but tougher on skeeters. Southeast Termite and Pest Control, I use them at my house. You should too. I've been very happy with them. Great family-owned company since 1971, southeasttermite.com. All right. Last week, I dared to suggest that Tennessee should be playing more interesting non-conference games on occasion. Not 4 every year, just give me something good. Well, we got some people who disagreed, and now you can go to YouTube and disagree with our clips after the fact. But I just wanted to show you, this one was representative of several of the others. I'm not going to read the whole thing, but we'll just let you get the gist of it. If we could pop this in here. Basically, first of all, I believe you are wrong. Tennessee is one of the only teams in the country that plays Georgia, Alabama, and Florida every effing year. Blah, 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 blah. We could take that down and go to the next graphic. That was pretty much the gist that I got from a lot of people, that you've got to play Alabama, Georgia, and Florida. Hey, look, Alabama and Georgia I get. Florida, sorry. That's a little like Kentucky couldn't beat you even when they were better than you. I get that Tennessee can't beat Florida. It's just an amazing, especially in the swamp. But that's a Tennessee thing. That's not a Florida thing. Everybody else is beating Florida. They have lost 7 games in 3 straight seasons. as we just showed you, the odds are they're going to do it again. They've already done 4 of the last 7 seasons. They've lost 7 games. So this would be 5 in 8 seasons. They haven't won an SEC title since 2008. Okay? There are the wins in the SEC over the last 3 years. Tennessee, 27. Tennessee's only behind Georgia, Alabama, and Ole Miss. You see the conference wins are in parentheses. Georgia, Alabama, Ole Miss, Tennessee, then LSU. Florida has 17 wins the last 3 years. If you want to look at the last 5 years, let's stretch it out a little, past Heupel, even 2 years into Pruitt, they're still behind you. So this idea that we're going to play Georgia and Alabama and egads, Florida. I'm sorry. I know that your history with Florida isn't good, but nobody should be scared of Florida in my mind. I've been beating this drum for a while that they had 2 Hall of Fame Mount Rushmore coaches in Spurrier and Meyer. You take those guys out of their history, it's not great, before or after. So to me, Florida is not a top SEC program. And like any program, they get the right coach, sure, you can turn it around. But I don't think Florida ranks up there with the Alabamas and the Georgias to where Tennessee should be scared of them. Am I wrong on that?
You could say egads when you go to Gainesville, but other than that, I would say
A lot of
no.
other schools don't.
Well, for Tennessee.
For Tennessee,
Because
yeah.
they can't beat Florida.
Yeah.
Florida is what you pointed
Yeah.
out earlier. But having said that, Florida has had 3 consecutive losing seasons. Out of that list you just showed from the Vegas folks, they're picked to have the 14th out of 16 teams.
Yeah.
14 out of 16. They're going to have a losing season again, probably. That's 4 in a row. Tennessee's had 3 consecutive winning seasons. Florida is not an elite program in the SEC anymore, and I think Tennessee has passed them.
Even if you go back to 2010 and all those down years for Tennessee football, Tennessee has 4 9-win seasons or better. Florida only has 5. So you put all of that futility, and it's still kind of close. Now, Florida did get to double digits a couple more times. Obviously, it was just Josh Heupel 2 years ago.
Yeah.
But it's not like this is just like one little stumble along the way for them. They've had some spikes, the Hall of Fame coaches. I think you have to be consistent to be in that elite category, and I don't put them there.
They are absolutely not a power. They're not. But it is kind of like LSU prior to Saban getting there, Alabama prior to Saban getting there.
Tennessee
like,
prior to Heupel. I mean,
Tennessee,
anybody, if you get the
yes.
right coach.
Yes, you have the ingredients to become a national power, but are you a national power now? Absolutely not. As you are what your record says you are. And so when I look at Florida, they've not been good. I think they got behind when it came to facilities. I think that they got behind when it came to NIL, and then you had Billy Napier. We're not going to do business this way, very Dabo Swinney-like, and now he's 2 years behind the 8 ball in getting players. No, they're not. They have the toughest schedule in the SEC for this year and next year, it looks like. They're not a power. They're not going to be for at least the next 3 seasons, and it'll be the next coach that tries to figure it out.
The potential is there, like you said. So I think that's why people, because of the spikes they've had and the potential, the recruiting background, all that, they should be on that upper level. They also have that national championship expectations for their fan base. So maybe that discussion elevates them in the eyes of some, but the reality says they're not on that level.
The problem for them is there are 2 other teams in that state that have the exact same expectations and the exact same possibilities. Florida State and Miami. UCF people would scream, "We won a national title. We gave ourselves the banner. We won undefeated." That's the way they'd scream it with that little voice.
Yeah, no.
Very mousy of them.
Anyway.
Yeah, but I mean, that's right. But you look at Georgia, there's nobody else in the state that can do it. So when I look at look what Florida's got in the recruiting, and they got a tougher deal pulling those guys out of Florida. They're competing with 2 other teams that are legit national championship that have won national titles. To me, I just look at it from a Tennessee standpoint. I hear you. If you want to say it's only us and Auburn that have to play Georgia and Alabama every year, okay, I get that. Those are the monsters of football. But don't throw Florida in there. That'd be like, well, we can't beat Vanderbilt, so as long as we're playing Vanderbilt, we can't schedule anybody. Don't give me that. That's your fault. You can't beat Vanderbilt. I mean, everybody else is beating Florida. You need to. So to me, I'll take the Alabama and Georgia crying. Don't cry about Florida. They're not what they used to be.
If LSU was regularly on their schedule, they would be one that you can make an argument to be in that category.
The other interesting thing about using that in terms of we can't schedule anybody good in the non-conference, starting this year, and we're about to show you, everybody's got pretty tough schedules for the most part in terms of everybody's got some named teams on there. But so that would mean, of course, you got to figure Tennessee's SEC schedule. If you look at those over-unders from Vegas and you just applied that, and it had nothing to do with me, I just took the Vegas numbers and put them with the conference schedules. It's got to be that Tennessee has the toughest schedule in the league, right? I mean, it's got to be. No, it's got to be. So we'll break that down next. The SEC schedules. Where does Tennessee rank? You're going to be surprised. Plus, if you're an Oklahoma fan right now, turn away. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Madisonville Marine, Hurricane deck boats, Skeeter bass boats, Suncatcher pontoons, aqua patios, Creval. I've been calling it Crevally because I spoke to somebody who said, oh, it's Crevally. Then I talked to somebody who said, no, it's Creval. Then I went to their actual website and heard somebody that works there saying it's Creval. Crevally, Creval, Creval, whatever the name, there's nothing better than that kind of boat. Get down to Madisonville Marine. They've got every kind of boat you could possibly want, and they got them at great prices. There's no better place to buy a boat than Madisonville Marine. That's why they get so much repeat business. Year after year, people going to Madisonville to buy a boat. They're not just sitting around Knoxville. They're not staying down in Chattanooga. They're going to Madisonville. There's a reason. Find out why. madmarine.com. All right, let's remind you of the poll. Let's see how that thing's going. If we could put up the poll. 49% still say you're already getting there in terms of all these changes making you lose interest in college sports. Nobody's getting specific. But you got 43%. It's getting close. The people who are saying, nope, they got me regardless. So I want to see, let's duke it out between those two. So I want to know your take. Or is it starting to wear on you? Or, man, just give me the college football season. Don't care about the changes. I just want to watch the games. You tell us how you feel. All right, let's take a look at SEC schedule strength. This is all Las Vegas. I got nothing to do with this. I took the over-unders for FanDuel and the Action Network are basically the same, so I just used those and applied them to the 8 conference games. The more wins for your opponent, the tougher the schedule. So Oklahoma, yikes, 71 wins among those 8 teams is the projection. Their schedule is brutal. And then Arkansas, Florida, and then their non-conference is tough. All the way down the list. Kentucky, that I always make fun of their non-conference schedule. Ole Miss, LSU. Oh, Tennessee down there with the weakest schedule. Outside of Texas and Missouri, Tennessee has the easiest schedule in the conference this year, according to Las Vegas, with those over and under win totals for their opponents. You got to, if you're Oklahoma, you got to be hating the fact that we got the tough end of the stick and Texas got the feather duster end of it.
I imagine Sooners fans aren't thrilled.
Yeah, welcome to the SEC, boys. But anyway, anybody here surprised that Tennessee is, well, that simple a conference schedule this year? You got Alabama, Georgia, and you still rank down. That tells you don't have much else other than Alabama and Georgia.
Yeah, I'm a little surprised it's that low. I thought it might have been 10th or so on that list. I wouldn't have thought third from
14th out of 16.
Yeah, so that's easier than I expected. But that is one of the reasons I think we look at Tennessee's schedule and see maybe 10 wins. Because there's a chance to go 10-2 if the stars align. Because you don't have LSU on there. You have a very beatable Florida team that's obviously pulling down that over-under. So it is a manageable schedule. And Tennessee, I think, caught a break, too, getting Mississippi State, Arkansas. They could have drawn a much tougher couple of teams there from the old SEC West. So
yeah, I mean, you got a coach in Sam Pittman who's going to be on the hot seat. You've got a brand new coach at Mississippi State. Of course, they run the same offense you're going to be running. So it'll be interesting to see those teams go at each other. Do they have any keys to defend one another? Or will it just be 88-87? But, yeah, they did catch a break in some of that. I mean, well, anyway, let's get your take. I mean, we're running out of time here, so quickly, thoughts on where Tennessee ranks on that list. Are you surprised they were 14th out of 16th, according to Las Vegas over-unders?
Well, when the schedule first came out, we're doing all the comparison of schedules, or who has the toughest when it first was released. I thought Tennessee was in the bottom half of the league, right? But now you start to see Florida projected for 4.5 or less, and then Mississippi State and Arkansas and obviously Vanderbilt. So it really is bottomed out, and that's really dragging that schedule. So now it makes sense, but at first I thought it'd be a little bit higher.
I'm not surprised at all. Adding Arkansas and Mississippi State, kind of trading out Missouri, which is higher on the list of over-unders, right? Yeah. And South Carolina for either one of those. I'd rather take on Arkansas and Mississippi State. Having Vanderbilt, of course, always there is going to bring your numbers down. So going to Oklahoma is a tough game. I think we all recognize that. But I'd rather go to Oklahoma than to Austin. So avoiding LSU and Ole Miss, the other teams that are talked about. Alabama and Georgia are obviously juggernauts. You get Alabama at home, doesn't factor in the numbers, but makes it winnable. The schedule is as favorable, I think, as Tennessee could have hoped for realistically going in.
And Florida's always tough for you, but they're not tough for everybody else. Just like Kentucky, you're tough for Kentucky even when you shouldn't be.
Yeah.
Even in Tennessee's worst years when Vanderbilt's beating them, Kentucky couldn't. So you look at Kentucky and Florida, and those are just two unique instances. But it does tell you, though, when you look at, for years it has been, well, we're stuck playing Alabama and Georgia, and it meant something, a little bit. Now everybody has a couple of those games on their schedule for the most part. When you can have Alabama and Georgia on your schedule, and your schedule still ranks 14th out of 16 in your conference, that tells you that everybody's got a tough schedule now. That to me, or for Oklahoma, you've got hell's schedule. What is the
and
Sooners?
Arkansas was second. Poor
Run through the
Arkansas.
Sooners schedule, just their SEC.
Yeah, SEC, Tennessee at home, at Auburn, Texas, then South Carolina at Ole Miss, at Missouri, Alabama at LSU. So
I wouldn't want to trade with that.
no,
A finish to the season with Bama and LSU.
Yeah. And Kentucky normally has freebies, and they're at Ole Miss. They got Georgia, at Texas, at Tennessee. So, yeah, Kentucky doesn't have the breeze that they typically do.
Yeah, they traded. Do they still have Mississippi State on there, or did they move them off there?
They don't have Mississippi
that was
State
their
this year.
constant.
Right.
That was, and they've traded Mississippi State for Texas.
Yeah.
There was a lot of making fun of Texas when they were coming into the league a few years ago. I promise no SEC team that got Texas on the schedule is thrilled about it this year.
Yeah, you're right. All right, and let me go ahead and put something else up here for you. In case you missed it this week, a time was announced, September 7th, 7:30 p.m. It's going to be a night game from Charlotte, week 2 of the season, and it's going to be right here on Channel 6. So you can watch the game, watch the post game here on Channel 6, turn your TV off, then get up the next morning, having never changed the channel, turn it right back on, and we'll be here to break down the whole thing for you. Save the date, September 7th, right here on WATE. I'm going to love the new ABC contract with the SEC because it's going to mean more Tennessee, more SEC games right here on Channel 6. All right, when we come back, here we go again. A North Carolina trustee is now talking about how North Carolina needs to get out of the ACC. Is there any way to save that league, and what's it going to mean for the SEC down the road? Come on back. All right, welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Daniel Hood Roofing. If you think your roof must be good because you don't see stains on your ceiling, think again. You can have a leak inside your home for a long time before you ever see it leak all the way through a ceiling to show you a brown spot up there. Have Daniel Hood Roofing come out, do a free inspection of your roof. They'll take videos to show you what they find. They have a tool that measures the amount of moisture getting through the shingles. And here's the thing, they're not going to try and sell you on a new roof if they don't see any reason for you to need a new roof. And if they do say, oh, you need a new roof, they're going to try and get your insurance company to pay for it, and they have a good track record of doing that. DanielHoodRoofing.com to learn more. All right, let's take a look at the poll results. Could mass changes ever make you lose interest in college football? 43% of you say they've got me regardless. 5%, if it becomes semi-pro. 2% said mega conferences would drive you away. 50% said already getting there. This really surprised me. I thought and this is Tennessee. This is Knoxville, Tennessee, which is a college football crazy town. I thought that would be 60% or higher for they've got me regardless. If I'm a college football guy, I'm paying attention to these types of things.
Is it not one of those things that we have this guy that texts our show, I'll never listen to your show again, about once a week? How much of it is that, right?
Complaining about something on the show.
Yeah, we all got those, yeah.
And it's just that I did something that made him mad. Like at the end of the day, I think there's a little bit of that. If fans are frustrated,
could be.
But I don't think it means they're going to go away.
Yeah, not having the connection, but oh, by the way, there's nothing better. So I'm still going to consider.
The deal is, anybody who runs a business has to look at their business and think, this isn't untouchable. You have to look at all the things that could fall apart. And if I'm in college football right now, if I'm the NFL, it's the only place where I'm not thinking like that.
Yeah.
College football, I'm a little concerned that all this change at once could mess things up for me. All right. Very quickly, Florida State and Clemson have already filed lawsuits against the ACC's grant of rights agreement to see if they might be able to escape for greener, as in money, pastures. This week, a trustee member at UNC came out and said that due to an imbalance with the budget woes at Carolina, they need to leave the ACC, or the ACC is going to need to reconstruct itself, which sounds a lot like let's boot some of the dead weight. 3 schools publicly talking about leaving. 7 schools have all gone to check out the league contracts. Will, is the ACC salvageable? Can all these guys ever come back together and be pals?
Not as a power conference. I mean, I think we're almost there anyway, where we have 3 tiers. We have the SEC and the Big Ten, then we have the ACC and the Big 12.
Who should be dealing right now with some sort of merger,
yes,
in my opinion.
Yeah, and then we have the group of 5, and that's kind of what we have. But the thing is, if someone could have gotten out of these contracts, they would have already. For the idea that they're going to jump to the SEC, ESPN's not going to negotiate against themselves to pay North Carolina more money, Clemson more money, Florida State more money. So I do think for right now, yeah, it is salvageable, and they should just accept their new normal, which is that you are a mid-major.
Yeah, in existing, it's salvageable, but like Will said, in being a major player in their mind, no, they're not.
They're already making less money from the playoff now. They're going to take less share.
Yeah, absolutely. And that tells you everything you need to know about where you fall in the landscape.
There are tons of analysts who will tell you that the only school worth getting anymore is North Carolina. Their value is here. Everybody else is kind of an incremental thing, depending on where you are. There are people, I've read it in The Athletic this week, that there's a thought that the Big Ten or the SEC might just grab North Carolina, and that's it. Sit at an uneven number. ACC's uneven right now. The Big Ten was uneven for years. I can't see that happening, though. I think there's this thought that Florida State and Clemson, well, you're already in those states. This isn't about states anymore. We did that with the cable network.
It's not cable television household,
yes,
right?
It's now becoming a programming for television.
Brand.
And the Clemson and Florida State brands are so good.
Yep.
I think you'd go past North Carolina in the SEC if you got them.
Well, would the average person watching us right now in Maryville, Powell, North Knoxville, wherever you might be, rather watch Tennessee versus Clemson or Tennessee versus North Carolina? Tennessee, Florida State, Tennessee versus Virginia Tech, right? I mean, those are still the biggest brands that bring the most eyeballs. I agree with you. I think that there's a ton of value there.
Could you see, I mean, clearly North Carolina is more valuable than anybody else, but could you see one of these leagues just grabbing North Carolina and saying that's it?
I could see the Big 12 doing it because they're lacking in that
12?
brand.
Okay.
Excuse me, the Big 12 because they're lacking in that brand. Now the Big 10, I think they're so loaded in the brands and they've already stockpiled. Unless it's on the route of hey, it's a complete free for all, and the ACC is dissipating. So somebody they got to go somewhere. Then I think they would take them, but I don't think they would take them as that only move.
But here's the thing: if North Carolina gets out, that means it is a free for all. Once one gets out, they're all going to follow the same path.
Yeah,
whoever
absolutely.
the first one is. So I look at it, if the Big Ten. Well, we'll talk about this in a second. But if you're the SEC, it would not surprise me. And let me preface this: for those that didn't see what happened to UCLA this week. UCLA is now going to have to pay calimony, as it's being called. I think that's brilliant. Because they left their sister school, California, they're going to have to write them a check for $10 million every year. So they thought they were going to the Big Ten, they're going to make 30, 40 million more. Well, now it's going to be 20 or 30 million more. 10 million a year, they're going to have to write that back to Cal because they're sister schools. There's a bill going through the state of North Carolina right now that UNC and NC State have to stay in the same conference. So let me show you something, what I think would be possible. You add Clemson, Florida State, North Carolina, and NC State at some point. If it's all hinging on North Carolina, we'll get to that in a second. But that, and then you just split it off into divisions, and you've got basically the old ACC schools, the old SEC schools, and then the old Big 12 Southwest Conference schools. But I mean, Clemson, Florida State have value. North Carolina is the most valuable, and I think Duke, Virginia, whatever. I just think NC State, because this UCLA, California thing, you may get stuck with them. But I think that would be a possibility. I think that's more likely than the SEC just adding North Carolina and stopping.
NC State's like a mid-Carter. That's kind of what you have from NC State. They're not terrible. You're not going to not watch NC State. You'd rather see them than Chattanooga or Akron, but
in terms of football ratings, they're actually better than North Carolina.
Yeah.
So, all right, television ratings each year. When we come back, if UNC is by far the most valuable school, okay, then they're going to have their choice of where to go. It would be the SEC, right? Right. Let's talk about that. And coming up, we're still going to talk about baseball, softball. Could Tennessee possibly pull a twofer this year in national titles? We'll discuss that. Come on back. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Safety Systems. About 10 years ago, I had a buddy who did the whole home automation thing, and man, he bragged about it and showed it off and always had the tablet out. Look what I can do with the curtains. Look what I can do with the lights. Well, to my friend, now everybody does that. So you can't brag anymore. But here's the thing. If you want to do that, there's nobody better than Safety Systems. They know what they're doing. If you want to run your whole house from your phone or your tablet, these are the people to call. VFL JJ Surlis and his team. I've seen what they can do. It's spectacular. It is the most forward-thinking thing in the world. Safety Systems, get in touch with them, visit them online. All right, going to be kind of a quick segment here. I'm trying to catch up so we can do a little baseball, softball talk. But we know the SEC and the Big Ten would both love to grab North Carolina if the Tar Heels were on the market. But if this is all about money, Big Ten would be more money. They're making more money. That would be more money for North Carolina. Then you got to ask about athletics and travel and all that other stuff. So my question for you guys, Josh, I'll start with you. Which conference would UNC choose?
I would think North Carolina would be more intrigued by the Big Ten because of the financial side and the academic side. Now, in the last segment, if you're talking about the relationship part with NC State, and if that also brings a financial aspect, and it's better for NC State to be in the SEC, if the overall answer can be, well, relationships in state, we avoid any kind of financial issue. If we want to go to the Big Ten and NC State ends up going to the SEC, or we're just separated, then maybe the SEC is the answer. But North Carolina's answer, I would think, is the Big Ten for academics for money.
Because the North Carolina is an AAU school, which is what all those, except for Nebraska, that's what Nebraska was when they went in there. I don't know if NC State is. I don't think they are. So that may be a stumbling block. Although, if the Big Ten looked at it and said, we're going to form a southern wing of UNC, Virginia, NC State, and Georgia Tech, they may overlook the AAU part of that. Which conference do you think North Carolina people, and again, it's not Joe Fan, it's chancellors and presidents and board members.
Yeah, I think I'm like Josh. I might lean slightly toward the Big Ten. I think North Carolina might be one of those schools, much less like Clemson and Florida State. I think they want to be in the SEC. I think North Carolina is one that legitimately could go either way, and that's partly because the Big Ten is appealing from the academic side. So I think that's a big part of it. But I would say they might lean slightly toward the Big Ten. Just might seem like a better fit. It's a basketball conference in a lot of ways, more so, or at least reputation-wise, more so than the SEC. That might fit for North Carolina. So I'd maybe lean slightly Big Ten.
Jimmy?
I'm going to lean slightly toward the SEC. Look, there is more money in the Big Ten, I get that. But I also think you can make up some of that difference because if you're playing Tennessee at home, you're going to have more people than if you play Indiana at home. You can sell more tickets at home for football games than you would by playing some of these nondescript Big Ten teams.
It may not be cheap to take your athletes to Austin, Texas, but it's cheaper than taking them to Eugene, Oregon.
Yes. And so from that standpoint, I think you mitigate some of the money from the Big Ten. Look, I don't know how much the academic plays into this. I think it's more of a money grab than an academic deal. Maybe it plays a bigger part than I'm thinking. But I do think you can make up some of that money in less travel and also by having more compelling games within your conference that would attract fans to your venues.
The thing that tells me it's all about the money is the fact that founding ACC member Maryland is now in the Big Ten, that they jumped. It's the money, it's the academics to me. I
think the academic side even leads to financial opportunities. So
I mean they share so much money up there in terms of their the what do they call it? It used to be the CIC. The Big Ten has a collective that they share, not an NIL collective, but a collective where they share. Well, basically, if you go to Illinois and they don't offer a class you need for your major, you can take it online from another Big Ten school. Also, all their libraries are shared, so it's like 10 trillion books and volumes are available, and they pool all this research money. They get more research grant money than they do TV football money. Still, where would North Carolina fans want to go? And I ask you that because where's their football going to succeed more?
Yeah.
Big Ten probably, right? What about their basketball? I mean, you've got UCLA, but they're up and down. If you come into the SEC, it's Kentucky every year. If you go, you got Ohio State in basketball. North Carolina would be the king bee in basketball in that conference. Wouldn't they be the crown jewel? And if they come here, I don't know that they are. It's Kentucky or North Carolina. I don't know. It's interesting. Where do you think the fans would want to go? Where they can win in the Big Ten or where they can fight it out in the South?
If you care about football, I think they'd be more worried about the meat grinder in the SEC as opposed to worried about Big Ten basketball or something. So I think they would see the better competitive path being the Big Ten.
But I think the more attractive path would be the SEC because you're playing opponents you know, and you've already played some of them anyway. So I think that would trump the fact that you would maybe win more games in the Big Ten.
Yeah, I think I lean SEC because even on the basketball side of Kentucky's the top dog, well, they're used to the North Carolina-Duke battle for who's at the top. So I don't think that would scare off North Carolina fans. I think SEC.
I also wonder with that academic thing, clearly that the presidents of the Big Ten are big into that. They believe in that. That is what they want to hang their hats on. We are the academic conference. Would they be more willing to create a southern wing that would include a Virginia or a Duke? There's talk that the SEC would love to get Virginia. I think they'd just come in and be Vanderbilt, but especially football. But would they create a pathway to more of their longtime rivals going to the Big Ten than the SEC would? I don't know that the SEC would be a home for Duke or that Duke would want to be in the SEC. But anyway, go ahead.
I don't think Duke would want to be in the SEC.
Yeah.
I would trade them for Vanderbilt, though, in a
I would
heartbeat.
too.
They're
Yeah, I would
100 times
too.
more competitive than Vanderbilt.
Yeah, I would too.
All right, well, it's always something, and we wait till next week. There'll be something else on realignment. Somebody else will talk up somewhere. Hey, when we come back, Vol baseball, Lady Vol softball, it's the time of year when titles are on the line. In case you haven't noticed, Tennessee has a shot at 2 national titles. What are the odds? Are they the best positioned team right now to do a twofer, to win the double duty, to bring 2 titles home? We'll talk to Vince Ferrara next about that. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Games and Things, Barstools, Barstools, Barstools. No one in East Tennessee carries more brands of kitchen and bar stools than Games and Things. They're the ones that we use on this site, on this set. When we moved to Channel 6 back in 2006, I bought the stools from, actually I charged Vince, but I make these guys pay me rent. But I bought them at Games and Things, and we're still using the same stools. They're fantastic. They're comfortable, which not all kitchen and bar stools are, and that's the beauty of Games and Things. You can sit in about 100 and find the right one that's right for your rump. Games and Things, because life should be fun. Get down there if you've got a need for kitchen stools, bar stools, they got them. Okay, Tennessee twofer, take a look at this. Vince is going to have to be a quick segment. I apologize.
Sure.
2 teams ranked in the top 15 in both baseball and softball. A lot of teams have that. Only one team has 2 teams in the top 3. Tennessee number 1 in baseball. They just swept South Carolina. Kentucky lost to Vandy yesterday. Kudos to Vanderbilt for doing you a favor. So Tennessee wins the SEC title. They're going to be the number 1 seed down in Hoover at the SEC tournament. Softball team, well, they're waiting it out today to find out who they're playing in the championship round of their own regional. They won yesterday, run-ruled Virginia, as they say. Tennessee number 1 in baseball, number 3 in softball. Vince, do they have, and this is kind of a crazy thing to throw out there. I know it's tough to analyze this, but are they best positioned to win 2 national titles this year? Among all those schools, are they in the best shape?
I do think so. It was interesting looking into it because not only the seedings that you go by, besides the RPI, you look at the seedings for softball in the actual NCAA tournament and some of the projections for baseball. It's very similar. And I was surprised that there was that many crossed over, like your point is.
Yeah, I was too.
But in softball, it's so dominated by the power schools. Oklahoma, I think, has won 5 of the last 7 national championships. So you kind of eliminate a lot of those just based on that. I would put Tennessee in that category. And so, yeah, Tennessee, Oklahoma. Oklahoma, I don't think, is as big of a threat on the baseball side, and Tennessee is the number 1 team. Whether they're the number 1 overall seed or not, I do think you combine the 2, and I do think Tennessee is in the best position. Doing it obviously is different, but I do think they're in the best position.
Which says a lot for just how the UT athletic department is rolling right now. I mean, there just aren't many sports that aren't thriving at the moment.
First time in the SEC that a school has won the basketball, men's basketball, baseball, and softball regular season championships. That's the University of Tennessee.
Who goes farther? And well, you do the broadcast of the baseball team.
Yeah.
But here's the thing. Baseball doesn't have a dynasty they're going to have to get through like Tennessee's going to have to get through Oklahoma. I mean, as you said, they've won so many. I would say baseball has a better shot than softball, simply for that reason, that Oklahoma's hanging out there. Am I right or am I wrong?
I do think so, and I think this year's Tennessee team is battle-tested. So because it's been different, even though they have the home run ability, they've won in different ways, and it's not like the Notre Dame Super Regional a couple of years ago where they were just dominating everyone, and then it was, what do we do now? I think it's a little bit different and tougher type of team. So I would say yes, but the biggest thing is what you said is Oklahoma, because they're not the number 1 seed. Texas is.
Number 2.
That tells you how good those 2 are. Oh, by the way, coming into the SEC. But I think that's such a big hurdle, I would say, baseball.
Yeah, Tennessee with their highest seed ever, number 3, and what's Florida number 4? So the top 4 seeds nationally are all from the SEC.
And they're tough to deal with a lot of times in the postseason too.
All right. Hey, Vince, thank you very much for being here today. We're going to bring out the rest of the guys. To finish this off, we're going to run through several topics. Chaz Lanier has set visits. Where's he going to wind up? Tennessee's hoop schedule, their SEC slate is laid out. We'll show you that. And Tennessee's raising the student ticket prices for football. Is that an issue? We'll take up for the little man. Come on back on the Sports Source. Welcome back to the Sports Source. This segment brought to you by Hearthside Bank. Very happy to welcome in a new sponsor to our show. Hearthside Bank, based in my old hometown of Middlesboro, Kentucky. This is a true hometown bank, folks. They've got locations across Southeast Kentucky, across East Tennessee, now with a new full-service branch right in Farragut, here in Knoxville, in the Knoxville area. Everything you expect from a bank, but with a much friendlier, a more neighborly feel. Just walking in to one of their locations, it feels, Hearthside really sums it up, it feels like a family kind of an atmosphere, friendly, neighborly. Check them out. Go to hearthsidebank.com today, read more about them, visit a local location, just walk in, say hi. Hearthside Bank, we're going to be telling you about them for the next few months ahead, and welcome them into the Sports Source family and thank them for bringing you today's show, hearthsidebank.com. All right, let's wrap up with a little grab bag action. We got about 3 minutes. So that's 1 minute on each of these. North Florida guard Chaz Lanier, who's kind of the last guy. He's the last star in the portal. Everybody wants him. He's visiting BYU today, which is interesting. BYU this weekend. He's visiting Kentucky tomorrow, and then he's visiting Tennessee. If this gets into a bidding war for the last guy out there, who's the favorite to get him?
If it's a bidding war, it's not Tennessee, I think. I think it's
Kentucky?
BYU or Kentucky at that point. BYU apparently may have a lot of money in this, so we'll see what it comes down to. But I think Tennessee's hope is that it comes down to wanting to play in his home state, not so much going for the big money.
And do you want to get better at defense?
And developing, yeah.
Kentucky's going to be the most desperate, I think, because they need players and they look bad because Calipari got all of that NIL money at Arkansas, so I think Kentucky's the favorite.
I'd go Kentucky as well.
You asked if it's a bidding war, then I would say Kentucky
If it's a bidding war.
is the favorite in that scenario.
And we don't know the kid, so maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if it's about money, Kentucky is desperate, and I think they got it to throw. But at the same time, who knows? It may not come down to cash. All right, Tennessee's basketball opponents were listed this week. They got Florida, Kentucky, and Vanderbilt home and away. So you play each of those both times, each of those twice, I should say. Your home opponents this year. Alabama, Arkansas, better get your earplugs, Jonas Adu. Arkansas comes here, much to his chagrin, I would guess. Georgia, Mississippi State, Missouri, South Carolina. On the road, Auburn, LSU, Oklahoma, Ole Miss, Texas A&M. My only takeaway here is I wanted to see Oklahoma or Texas here in Knoxville, but you don't get either of them this year. Any other thoughts from you guys?
Jonas Adu, that jumped out, obviously. I mean, that'll be a fun one.
Calipari and Adu. And then the Alabama game is huge because they'll probably be the favorite going in.
I got to hear Florida being the other home and home. I don't know that there's much of a rivalry there with Florida basketball right now, but that will rotate from what I understand.
At least you can beat Florida and Gainesville in basketball.
That's true.
There you go. You don't play in the swamp. Yep. And then the last question, about 30 seconds here. UT doubling the cost of student football tickets this year from $10 to $20, and then they will go to $25 next year.
Prepare to see more kids at your tailgate and not going to the game. I think that's when you can probably, especially with as many cupcake games as you have, your good non-conference game, good-ish non-conference games, neutral site. Yeah, I think that eventually, especially on 12 o'clock kicks, cupcake opponents, kids will stop going.
You'll have fewer fans, students that buy it, which opens up more tickets to sell at face value. So Tennessee ends up making a lot more money.
Yep. That's all about making money. And it's not enough that the ones who want to go. Yeah, the ones who want to go are still going to go, but the ones who are on the fence, more to sell to the public.
All right. Very good. Josh, you don't get to comment. We'll wait till next week.
It's great business.
Thanks to all of our sponsors. Thanks to you for watching. We'll see you right back here next Sunday.